We can get rolling. Yeah, excellent. Well, welcome this afternoon for everyone. I'm Sam Tetlow. I'm the founder and CEO of Grant Engine. We are in our 10th year of operations and have been very active. And really, our primary mission is to save lives and extend the length of a quality life. And we are really excited to have Jennifer Thabit, who's with us and has been part of DARPA and the broader ecosystem. And DARPA does meaningful things, and I'd like to have Jennifer really introduce herself. But as a backdrop, before there was DARPA, there was this thing called ARPA, which was Advanced Research Program Authority. And one of the transformative innovations that came out of ARPA was this thing called ARPANET, which if you're enjoy the fruits of the internet, you can thank DARPA for that. Then became ARPA became DARPA. If you like to get around the world using a global positioning system, you can thank DARPA for that. If you are not a fan of pandemics, you can thank DARPA for funding Moderna early on with the mRNA vaccines. And there are too many things to name about the impact that DARPA has had over the decades. And it has been the mission and the transformative impact is difficult to overstate. And representing that entire force of innovation for the future is Jennifer Thabit, and she's an excellent resource for small businesses and really bringing forward the capability of DARPA. So Jennifer, I'd love to have you just say a few words, whatever you'd like to say from your side.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much for introducing us, and thanks for bringing up the internet. I always like to say you're welcome, and for those of us that have kids, I'm sorry, because I know it definitely changed a lot of things. But yeah, I have been with DARPA, gosh, for almost 20 years now. I started out as a contractor, and then I converted over to run the Small Business Programs Office in 2020. And since that time, DARPA has really expanded, much more than doubling down on its commitment to small business growth and expanding the non-traditional ecosystem. So I am just so thrilled to be here today to chat with you guys all about the different entry points at DARPA, the SBIR and STTR program, and then the resources, DARPAConnect, as Sam mentioned, that can really help you get started on your journey.
Yeah, excellent. All right, I'm going to go through a few slides. Really setting the stage. I'm going to aim for less than 15 minutes, which will be the goal, and everyone can hopefully give me a little bit of grace if I go slightly beyond that, and then turn it over to Jennifer for the key things you want to hear. So, but really spend most of the time hearing from Jennifer. So I'll do a quick overview, talk about defense themes, implications, where we're headed in the defense arena. Grant Engine covers a lot of human health. We also focus on core defense tech. So we'll have a balanced review and then touch on a couple of points around Grant Engine. Just to know who you're hearing from, Grant Engine is an organization that has been around for, we're in our 10th year. The top line of this slide is really our bottom line. We're really here in this business to work with leading differentiated teams and products to save lives and extend the length of a quality life. We certainly see that in human health, but obviously defense technologies and DARPA as a driver of innovation, as among other agencies, but really a longstanding catalyst, does that very well to preserve our way of life and preserve our lives, and we lean into that as an important element. We're based in New York City and in Chapel Hill, and we obviously add value by saving lives to helping selectively working with clients to bring differentiated products and product roadmaps to their respective markets, whether that's in the life sciences space, pure play, or a dual use between civilian and military, or pure play military. That's how we work, and we've got a highly differentiated process that ultimately we've got many pieces that make our company unique and different, but that all really triangulates on an outcome of a win rate that is 2x to 4x higher than the national average. We measure that at the NIH by the type of grant, but also across other agencies that report out success rates at the total agency level. The most important thing, and I'm really pleased to say a number of our team are here on this call, our team of over 70 people is top flight and top notch, and really honored and grateful that they are here on this call, but moreover are committed to our Grant Engine mission. We're going to talk about a number of pieces of content on this call, but we wanted to just preview and profile a number of free or complimentary resources that are available to everyone. We've got a very interesting solicitation evaluation tool. When you get the slides, you can click on that hyperlink under solicitation evaluation. It's a very useful tool to parse a solicitation and evaluate requirement criteria. It runs you through an automated eligibility quiz tuned to that solicitation, identifies competitors of yours that may apply, how well they might fare against the solicitation requirements. That's a really great call, a really great tool, rather, that's all self-service and driven by a little bit of AI backend. We have subject matter experts we do to confirm competitiveness readiness on every project we undertake. That's all free and complimentary. We have a series of funding toolkits for bigger funding, an accounting compliance checkup that's tuned up for DOGE and the current administration. We've also got other pieces around extending your funding roadmap for non-dilutive funding through customer funding models, case studies of how those work. There's at least 6 of those different models. And then we lean in on equity fundraising of providing contact lists as we go. So let me turn our attention to some defense themes that, given geopolitics, this was true, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. It's more true post Russia, Ukraine. It's even more true with Iran and Israel, Gaza. National security is a higher need than ever. And what is happening in these defense themes is that legacy primes are giving way to emerging companies where innovation is really being driven by new companies. You see SpaceX, Anduril, Palantir as some examples of programs of records where they have a startup mentality, an effective startup mentality, where they are all in on their goals. SpaceX has a Cortez, that philosophy of arriving into America from Cuba, burn the ships because we have to make the new world successful. And otherwise we're going to die. That mentality is how that is baked into that DNA. Starlink, as a revenue model for SpaceX, is a means to the end to become a multiplanetary species. Anduril with autonomous warfare, making products that are able to be assembled with a bag of tools from Home Depot, right? That is how their philosophy of providing redundancy and be able to still deliver on leading edge innovation in a very low tech way, driven by software forward versus just hardware advanced. Palantir, clearly in an AI forward company, deeply integrated and embedding. They would have forward engineers downrange, listening to theater commanders, understand what those problems are. That helped inform their product roadmap. And so these are 3 examples of companies. SpaceX isn't pure play in the military space, but the philosophy of innovation as a business model is very consistent. And we see in the UK and Ukraine this gamification of rudimentary physical technology integrating with human operating craft as being very effective. And legacy primes, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, Boeing, others, we wouldn't be here where we are. So there's gratitude there and there's respect there. And what is happening now is a different model. It is a model that speaks to more of how you, as a company and as a leader, drive innovation, similar to what these companies on the slide have. They have had a startup mentality, they're using at-risk capital to progress technology, and not being a cost plus where an extension and a higher budget means a revenue model for those legacy primes, but rather an at-risk capital where the government as a source of funding, but also a customer, is driven towards success is the only option versus we're going to take longer and cost more money, and that's how our business model functions. So it's more about thinking about the warfighter, our civilian society, as a market that needs to be served with a margin of safety that's a very significant thing. So this headset that success is the only option, failure is not an option, is how these companies have been successful, and how I think we see this innovation happening in the marketplace. These next two slides are really just a example of it working, right? So these are the legacy primes, their revenue last 12 months, how much they're valued, the value divided by their revenue, and their growth rate. And you can see here the highest is around 2.5, right? In terms of value per revenue. Now, these are bigger companies, maturity drives slow, bigger companies grow slower. But the difference between these legacy primes and the innovation companies is not small. One of the quotes that I've heard from one of these primes is, as they recruit team and members to build out their frontier of innovation, we'd rather have people stay in the company than find the best people. And that can be perceived as safe, but in this environment, I think it's actually dangerous, because it stifles innovation. It stifles the innovation that's needed to be on the vanguard of tech and products and effectiveness that works downrange, or in a theater environment, and dual use that works for civilian as well. And in an area where being a leading edge is the difference between living and dying, that mentality of not being the best is actually, I think, not safe. And so this is really a two messages around what's their company worth, but how they're working. And as startups, these two companies where we have data on where their valuation and their value of revenue, the difference between their valuation and revenue and versus legacy primes is enormous, right? It's more than 10x to more than 50x, or call it right around 50x, just the valuation multiple. And so that speaks to the opportunity that is in front of you and a motivation for where we need to go. Again, these mentalities and these drivers are quite key. A couple of quick slides on where we're headed. Defense, kinetic operations downrange have evolved to electronic and drone warfare, like unmanned vehicles, or having unmanned vehicles surround a leading fighter jet in the air, in the land, autonomous vehicles at sea, covert infiltration, supply chain redundancy, supply chain fluidity, and applied artificial intelligence. This is where we're headed. And this next slide talks to another level of detail around this, where AI autonomy is absolutely in place right now, for many areas. And as we think about Taiwan and the implications of that on the geopolitical landscape, there are and coming up to 2027, where China has said they feel like they have rights along that 2-year time horizon. AI is a key part of that theater and competitiveness there. Quantum, GPS works well, and there are other elements around quantum computing and quantum sensing that can test bunkers that are beneath the surface, that are not visible through traditional optics, but are relevant for identifying space and scope of Iran uranium enrichment, Hamas bunkers and tunnels. This idea of energy and climate is important, I think, in the geopolitical, not on a geography, Earth-wide, but energy in a forward operating base, resilience is mission critical. This idea of training, and operating in a synthetic environment so that you can identify optimizing how to operate in that environment using a synthetic environment where you're not losing blood, you might be losing some sweat, is a key advancement. And then digital twinning in that same thesis. These are just snapshots and just a few examples of where things can go. And I'll answer questions as after we wrap up, but I appreciate those coming in through the chat. And then this next slide, Dan, if we can start that poll, that first poll of how familiar you are with DARPA's SBIR process, that'll help us tune the overall discussion. We have seen, and this is definitely true for PMs at the DARPA stage, as it is for ARPA-H and the broad arena of doing larger programs, somewhat less so in terms of creating agency buy-in on the SBIR front. But this three-step process of going after larger funding is something that is quite significant. And I don't know if anyone, so this idea, I don't know if anyone can see the questions. I don't know that we're getting responses, Dan. I don't, just as a programming note, let's make sure everyone can see those questions. I might be the only one that's not seeing them. Dan, if you're getting responses, great, but I'm only seeing just an answer for myself. So when we've got maybe 50-65% response, why don't you publish those results, Dan? But this idea of how do you approach significant funding for DARPA and other play agencies, we really see a three-step process of strategy and planning, creating agency buy-in, and that's really at the PM level of understanding alignment of that vision of where they want to take that program. And there's a lot of detail within that step two. And then clearly having a good pursuit strategy on content and positioning is really good. So yeah, this is great. I think it's encouraging from a content, maybe the selection bias that 5% are very familiar, but over 50% are not familiar at all or have just heard of it and not sure how it works. So that's great. We're glad to see that. So there's our three-step process, just to finish off the slide of how Grant Engine goes. And then I'll do 3 quick slides. So Grant Engine has a find, win, manage. And Dan, if you can do poll number 2 of how important non-dilutive funding is for you, and publish that answer. If we've not published this existing results, I think they've seen it. So that's how find, win, manage is how we interact with our clients. We've got excellent expertise in solicitation searches, a variety of winning strategies, and then post-award compliance and management. Within the win stage, we have everything from a Alpha, which is an AI writing tool, low cost of $199 a month, plus a very low success fee, all the way on the right-hand side of we write the grant and have a demonstrated win rate that's quite superior to the national average, and everything in the middle as well. If you are interested, let's wait until we get to 85, maybe 80, 85 responses, Dan, before publishing. And then the last slide I have, if you're interested in working with Grant Engine, just reach out to us at funding@grantengine.com, or and we typically do an NDA, receive a product development funding strategy, that document, and then we hold that SME call. That, of course, that's all complimentary. So that's really what I wanted to share from the Grant Engine side. And let me turn it over to Jennifer Thabit for her to pick up her slides and pieces. And I'm actually going to drive or Jennifer. So give me 1 minute to pick up her presentation, and then I will turn it over to you, Jennifer, to pick it up from here.
All right. Thank you guys so much. That was a great introduction. It also kind of helps give me a little bit of details with the poll as to how to kind of help you all and educate you on all things DARPA. So again, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm so excited to be here amongst so many different innovators and thought leaders. It's really my job to seek out, engage, educate, and really partner with the innovation community on all things DARPA, to really make sure that you have access and a clear pathway to working with DARPA and understanding our funding opportunities. So let's dive right into the next slide, and let's talk a little bit about our mission. Sam did a good job kind of laying the groundwork for that, right? But our mission is really to stay ahead of state-of-the-art technology. It really is to create those breakthrough technologies and capabilities for national security to prevent and create strategic surprise. So we invest really heavily in early stage products and ideas, really to de-risk or change the impossible into the possible, right? Sam mentioned a bunch of our successes to date, but I wonder how many of you actually know that it was a small business in the DARPA SBIR program that was responsible for designing the integrated chip that enabled Wi-Fi. That SBIR project really pioneered the technologies that enable wireless connections found in virtually every smartphone, tablet, and computer. It made smartphones capable of everything from browsing the internet and providing driving directions, really to streaming music. But I'll tell you, that was a project from the 80s. And if you think about when we got that wireless technology, it's just too long. And so a lot of the work that we are really doing on DARPA is working on a holistic partnership with the R&D community to really help you de-risk your idea and fast track that commercialization and transition. So let's go ahead and dive in real quick to our structure. DARPA is composed of 6 technical offices, the science offices and the systems offices. And I will say that use of smaller businesses, the smaller innovation ecosystem, is fairly consistent across the technical offices. I always like to include this slide. As Sam mentioned, you're going to get the slides emailed to you after the presentation so that you have an idea of the thrust areas. But bear in mind that our thrust areas change quite frequently from time to time. So this is the snapshot of the thrust areas that each of our technical offices are focused on right now. But I encourage you to do your research and become familiar with the thrust areas by checking our website regularly to see what, if anything, has changed or evolved. Our tech offices really are composed of program managers that are here on a rotating basis. And so those thrust areas rotate based on the makeup of our technical offices. So let's talk about DARPA a little bit. So DARPA is a unique agency, right? And in order to stay ahead of state-of-the-art technology, we have to employ a unique operating model. We are a $4.2 billion funding agency, and our budget is only continuing to grow each year. We have to be moving that needle forward, which means that we are not afraid to take risks, right? We are looking for those revolutionary, not evolutionary ideas. We are where you come when you have an idea and you're not exactly sure if it's going to work. We're that agency. We're your home. We're your partner. We're the ones that are going to try to help you change that impossible idea into something possible. We're program manager centric, right? We rotate our program managers in for term appointments and really give them the mission or challenge to push themselves and stay ahead of state-of-the-art technology. We are really trying to fund those revolutionary ideas where we're not quite sure if it's going to work. And if you think about it, right, if everything we do is a success and works, then we're probably not pushing far enough, which is why I say we are really your partner to go to de-risk and really see if there's a there technologically speaking. So how do you do this and how do you work with us, right? Let's talk about the different pathways to partnerships. Let's go ahead to the next slide. There's basically 3 main ways to do business with DARPA. Our programs, right, hence the name program managers, those are our large, multi-year, multidisciplinary efforts. Our challenges, those are our competitions on unique R&D programs. And then you have this box on the side of the screen that are our smaller efforts like seedlings and explorations. But the honest truth is that is probably the best place for new entrants to start. So let's go to the next slide. I want to dive in because I felt as if that last column needs a lot more explanation. In DARPA, we really do encourage work from small businesses and non-traditionals and new entrants, right? And as you can see at that bang box at the bottom of the screen, right, DARPA leverages the small business innovation ecosystem to really push our technology forward. So every year we do about 27 to 29% of work with small businesses. And so I put this slide together to give you an idea of different entry points, right? I think the key for this slide is there's a whole variety of entry points that may be a little bit lighter of a lift, whereas a program tends to be multidisciplinary and you have to put large teams together. These are opportunities where you can pretty much apply on your own or maybe just have one or two subs for efforts. These do tend to be a little smaller in dollar amount, but not smaller in significance. And the key for this is a lot of the things you see on this screen really serve as the basis for market research for our larger efforts. So let me go into two real quick on here, and then I want to dive into the SBIR program. So back to that slide just for a minute, please. Something that may be of interest, and I should mention that there's information all about each of these entry points on DARPAConnect.us, and I will get to that in a minute. The advanced research concepts, that is one of our newer offerings. It was previously, for those of you familiar with DARPA, run out of our Defense Sciences Office. It is now actually elevated agency-wide and is run out of our Director's Office. And those are accepted on a rolling basis, and those are about a $300,000 award with the idea that it can pay for one FTE for about a year. It's a great way to come up with a concept that you are exploring where we say, yeah, maybe there's a there, and let's work with us on it. Another thing I want to point out is our ARIS Marketplace, and I will get to that at the end, but that is our newest entry point. And that is a 7-minute pitch video that really lowers that bar to entry. You don't need, a PhD in proposal writing to apply. If you have an idea, it's bold enough to matter. ARIS is kind of the great entry point because all you need is to fill out a 4-slide template and have a computer and a camera, and then you're off to the races. So I'll get to that in a minute, but the point of this is that there's multiple different ways to get involved with DARPA, and we are trying to make it so that if you have an idea, we can hear from you. So let's dig into something near and dear to my heart, the SBIR and STTR program. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Just to baseline everybody, right? SBIR and STTR is a congressionally mandated program. It's really designed to stimulate technological innovation and foster and encourage participation by small businesses. What a lot of people are not aware of is that little bang box at the bottom, that the SBIR and STTR program is the largest source of early stage tech financing in the US. And at an agency like DARPA, an agency that really prides itself on being ahead of the curve, really doing that early stage research and development, this program, this SBIR and STTR program, really nicely complements and supports the work that the rest of the agency is doing. And it really makes our SBIR and STTR program a standout program for other components and really a model for which they can base their transition and research efforts on. I think the real key takeaway from this slide is that it's not a program where DARPA, we fund SBIRs and STTRs for the sake of funding them. It's a program that at DARPA, we really leverage and strategically use to find that next big innovative solution. So how do we do that? Right? We have a very unique program at DARPA, right? Our program is distinct from other SBIR programs because our agency is very different. We've really updated and redesigned these programs to really try to complement and support the work being done in our tech offices. Unlike the majority of DoD components, our DARPA and SBIR STTR topics are developed just in time as they're needed. We do subscribe to the monthly release date, the first Wednesday of every month that the DoD releases topics, but we don't do a call once a year, once every 6 months for our program managers to come up with ideas. As our program managers are coming up with ideas and identifying needs, they are working and partnering with us to get those topics drafted. So what does that really mean in the sense of how it applies to you all and why I say the program is a model? And really what that is it allows us to tie our SBIR and STTR topics to larger DARPA programs. And what that does is really avails our small businesses of a lot of the same benefits, many of which related to transition that you would have if you were working on a larger DARPA program. We also have our program managers drafting our topics. I always put this on the slide and say it's an innovation, but it's hard for me to even swallow that because that's what should be happening, but it's not. At other agencies, they are releasing topics in thrust areas that are important to them, finding reviewers, and then assigning a technical point of contact or a contracting officer representative to manage the program. At DARPA, we don't do that. At DARPA, what we do is have our program managers dream up the idea, read through all the evaluations, make source selection decisions, and then partner with our small businesses. And what that does is really sets you up for transition success because at the outset, you have the buy-in, support, and partnership of the program managers. I'm going to hold our last piece just for a few slides because I will get to our SBIR XL in just a minute. But let's go to the next slide because I always like to grab you at the hook. And what's really important for people, right, is what's the money. And so in this case, I'd like to tell you that our phase ones are typically about $250,000. And we have set that number very specifically because that is the cap of the simplified acquisition threshold where I can issue a purchase order and get you on contract very quickly and get you starting to work. Our phase twos and directive phase twos tend to be about $1.8 million, and they go for anywhere from 24 to 36 months. I will tell you that these numbers tend to be where we start. They don't tend to be where we end. Because our program managers are so invested, because we do a lot of partnering with our small businesses, and we think about transition from the outset, this is where we tend to start, but it's not where we end. It is not infrequent for us to get plus ups from other agencies or from DARPA program funds to help enhance and support the work we're doing in our SBIRs. So how do we use this program? Let's go to the next slide. I designed this slide because I want to show my program managers in DARPA and you all the flexibility and utility of this program. The SBIR and STTR program has so many different tools available to it that it really does creatively enable our program managers to do their work. So I call this our placemat, and it's important to know that everything you see on the screen, with the exception of SBIR XL, is really applicable across the entire DoD. All of these tools are available throughout the DoD. So phase ones and directive phase twos tend to be how we release our topics. And I will say that we probably tend to do about a third of our topics is phase one, a third is directive phase two, and then we actually end up doing that final third of a mix between phase one and directive phase two, where the program manager is open to hearing both ideas. Moving down the screen, we have sequential or concurrent phase twos and adoptions. These are really important points because every SBIR and STTR can have up to 2 phase twos. They can be sequential, they can be concurrent, or they can be years apart and done by other agencies, which brings us to adoptions, right? If you have ever been the recipient of a SBIR or STTR and you have not progressed beyond phase one or beyond a first phase two, you are eligible to be adopted. This is a cross-agency award, and it's really important to understand that because what that means is you can identify a technical point of contact in the services or a program manager at DARPA and reach to them and say, I have research an area I think you may be interested in. here's my SBIR STTR topic. It has not been capped out, and maybe you might want to adopt me. What that does is cut quickly through the contracting process. You have already satisfied competition, and it leverages SBIR dollars as opposed to program or palmed dollars. So it tends to be much quicker. I will tell you that it's a very quick process. We do about 40 to 65 of them a year at DARPA. And if you think about the fact that our program managers are here for term appointments, it fits very nicely into that because it's a quick process, and I can probably have you on contract in less than 60 days from the first time you drop in a proposal. It is a great option. So again, it's something that is available throughout the government. And I do get questions sometimes if you have gotten a SBIR STTR from a non-DoD agency, can the DoD still adopt you? And the answer to that is yes. Now, moving down the screen, we have our enhancements or our co-funds. Remember I said that those numbers you saw on the previous slide are where we start, but they tend not to be where we end. That's because we have a pretty healthy enhancement or matching fund, where if you get $500,000 in outside funding, we will match that with $500,000, or we get a lot of what's called co-funds. Because our DARPA program managers are so invested in our SBIRs, they do catch the attention of many outside agencies. And so, as I mentioned, it is not uncommon for other agencies to be plussing up our efforts. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide to talk about our newest tool, our SBIR XL pilot. Our SBIR XL pilot started late 2020, early 2021, and it really aimed to ask the question, if we could identify more clearly transition and commercialization milestones at the start, because remember, we are looking for those revolutionary ideas, and sometimes it's not so easy to understand where that transition is going. So for some of those unique R&D problems, if we can really help identify those transition and commercialization milestones from the start, and if we can give you a larger award value, which currently is $4 million, can we help you get across that finish line, cross that valley of death quicker, and really help you become a successful small business that can scale? The idea of this really was to try to appeal to some new non-traditionals and try to help give you that undiluted funding plus up. And so as you can see from the screen, 50% of our SBIR XL awards have been made to first-time DARPA performers. We've done 10 topics across the technical offices. We have hit topics in 5 of our 6 technical offices so far, and 61% of all of our proposals have come from first-time DARPA performers. So far we are hitting those metrics. As far as transition, even though the program is still very young, we have seen great successes. In fact, the most recent success I learned about a few weeks ago was where one of our SBIR XL performers received $25 million in undiluted funding as a result of their work in DARPA. So not too shabby. But having all of these tools available and educating you all and my program managers on how to use them really only takes us so far. We have to continue to think and innovate and grow if we're going to continue to encourage growth and participation in this program. So that takes us to our next slide and what we have been thinking about. And that is our contracting. I travel all the time. As I said, it's my job to really encourage and find new potential proposers for DARPA. And I hear you that working with the government can sometimes be disincentivizing. Or sometimes I think you might feel like you even need like a secret decoder ring to read through solicitations. And so our answer to that is really to address that by thinking through our acquisition and contracting upfront to help make us more approachable and help make the contracting process less daunting. So about 2 years ago, we aim to innovate our SBIR and STTR contracting process. And as you can see from the slide, we have dedicated contracting support exclusively for our SBIR and STTR programs. And what does that mean? That means that before we're releasing our topics, we're really thinking through our acquisition strategy to make this quicker. I mentioned when we talked about funding that our phase ones are capped at $250,000. That was actually a big change for us because before then, our phase ones tended to be a little bit higher. But if we lowered that dollar value to 250,000, which is the cap for simplified acquisition, what that meant was we could issue a purchase order. And that means I could have you on contract in less than a week. I don't know about you, but I think $250,000 getting it in less than a week, as opposed to waiting 6 months for a $275,000 or $300,000 award, is a really good thing. And so far, the response has been great, right? But we didn't stop there because I know that that's only the start. So we really went through and thought about how best to help our phase twos and our directive phase twos. And we just finished a pilot back in early spring where we tested a simplified cost template, a simplified review process, and we published the terms of the draft OT along with the solicitation so that everybody was on the same page. The result of that, 4 days to make a $1.8 million award. So we've heard you, and we're really trying our best to help make this process as easy as possible. But we can't stop there. So let's go to the next slide, right? Once I've got you in, and once I've got you on contract, I need to think about where you go. Right at DARPA, again, we're looking for those revolutionary ideas. We don't make things, we don't buy things, we don't build things. We are never going to be your end user, and very rarely will we be your integrator. So what we really need to do is what I like to call give you a great pair of legs so that you can walk out of DARPA and go on to your next award so that your progress, your research and development doesn't stop with that single award from DARPA. So right from the kickoff, we partner with you. We do not offer TABA funding. What we do is have a very robust transition and commercialization support program. And it's basically focused on the 3 pillars you see here: performer engagement and education, transition partner engagement, and growth opportunities and exposure. We want to work with you early and often to get you thinking about transition from the outset. So how do we do that? Let's go to the next slide. We give you guidance from the start. We meet with you right at kickoff to understand your ideas on transition and where you think you're going. We give you tailored feedback. We meet with the program manager to help get their perspective. We send tailored weekly alerts to make you aware of new solicitation opportunities, educational opportunities, and whatnot. We help track your success, and we help you clearly define your roadmap. Now, we do a lot of this early and often, probably earlier than most people would be comfortable with, but we really have the belief with this program that if we can get in early and if we can have conversations with you and potential end users before the completion of your SBIR STTR program, it really helps prevent pivots and reworks, because we've heard from the end user how your R&D could be inserted into what they are doing. So I've hit you with a lot, and let's go to the next slide for a minute, because there's help. I don't expect everybody to remember everything that is been said on this webinar. I don't expect you to rewatch this to find all the tips and trips. What we really need to do is to figure out how to get you to really understand and give you resources to better enable your partnership with DARPA. So out of that idea, the idea of DARPAConnect was born. Our previous director used to say that what keeps her up at night is not all of the challenging and scary things she knows about. It's the fact that she knows there's good ideas out there and we're not hearing them because you guys don't know where those front doors are. You don't know how to work with us. And so with that, DARPAConnect was born. DARPAConnect is also under my purview in the small business office, and it is a free resource really designed to broaden our reach and give you resources to work with us. Now, how do we do this? We do this in, I would say, 3 main ways, and it covers all of those 4 pillars you see underneath there. We do regional and virtual pop-up events. We do 4 a year, and we actually just did our all virtual one in July, where we kind of go through an intense day training of all things you need to know about how to think DARPA. We then follow that up with a curated online curriculum where there is a series of about 20 or 24 training modules that are self-paced that you can go through at any time to better understand different aspects of DARPA. We add to those about quarterly, and they're everything from a DARPA 101, a SBIR 101, to I have questions about security or OT agreements. There's a module on there to find that. However, that other piece, right, we go from having in-person and virtual events to a self-paced learning, you lose some of that human touch. So we round that out with our coaching support and our robust networking, and we call that our Connect Corner, where we offer a series of monthly webinars, which are on topics of interest to you every other month, and then the other month is an AMA, an open mic session, which we have one coming up on August 7th, that talks all about the open solicitations that are out on the street for DARPA, as well as features a speaker. To then, the biggest piece of that, it's also where you can get one-on-one office hours, which are 10-minute sessions to answer questions you have, or coaching, where we do 30-minute coaching sessions. So let's go to the next slide to kind of dive in a little bit. I mentioned we have these regional pop-ups. No, go back, please. There we go. I mentioned we have these regional pop-ups. We have 4 a year that are in person. They all do also have a virtual component. And then we have 1 virtual each year. So we have 2 remaining. One will be in Bozeman, Montana on September 24th. And the final one will be in Seattle, Washington on December 4th. The Bozeman, Montana registration is available online at DARPAConnect.us. As I mentioned, there's in-person and a virtual component. This is where we bring not just a team of program managers with us, but we also bring security representatives, contracting management officers, as well as human resources for those of you that may actually want to join us and work as a program manager. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, we also have our Connect Corner. We have our next open mic session coming up on August 7th, which will go over our solicitations and feature a speaker, Hunter Martin, from our Strategic Technologies Office. Additionally, at the end of the month, we will have our monthly webinar on teaming. And then finally, let's get to that next slide, please, so we don't run out of time. I mentioned on our entry points, ARIS. This is our newest entry point. Go ahead and go to the next slide real quick for me. ARIS is our Expedited Research Innovation System topic, where it's a video submission topic. There are currently 4 enduring topics that you see across the bottom of the screen. Topic areas 1, 2, and 3 are a little specific, and topic area 4 is a little more open. And then we release special topics as well under ARIS. So I will tell you that we have our Ag BTO topic open with 5 different subtopics in there for those of you that are in ag or bio defense. These may be of interest to you. It is a 7-minute video submission. ARIS kind of changes the game, because what we're looking for from you is a 7-minute video submission, 5 minutes on 4 templated slides and 2 minutes talking about your company and your resources that you offer. And then if you get what's called an awardable solution, the awardable solution, you are then post-competitive. And so we can actually get on the phone with you and outline a statement of work and costs very quickly. ARIS, we have made awards in 4 days. Our average time for making an award on ARIS is less than 18 days. So when I say that we are committed to really trying to help speed up the acquisition process and make us more approachable and accessible, ARIS kind of speaks for itself. There's a whole bunch of tutorials online about ARIS and how to use that. And because it's so new, we actually do offer special customized ARIS office hours and coaching sessions for people as well. So in the interest of time, I'm going to go to the next slide and give you all the QR codes that you might need to connect with us. And then I think I left just a few minutes for questions.
Amazing, Jennifer. That was outstanding. Thank you so much. We do have a couple of questions in the chat starting at 12:47 p.m. if you see those.
I'm pulling up the chat right now.
Yeah, those are
Okay.
I think all here.
So I see at 12:47, do we have local offices? So DARPA is only in Arlington, Virginia. We're a few miles from the Pentagon, but we do partner with Apex Accelerators. And in fact, we were in Huntsville a few months ago. And we are actually speaking at the NAPEX conference. So I would say that your best place to start is DARPAConnect.us, and then get questions answered from them. And then they can probably connect you with some of our partners in the local Apex community. Okay, then I see at 12:50 from Amanda. This is great. I love that DARPA is supporting the transition and commercialization of technologies. Do we support transitions of SBIR technologies not done with DARPA but other agencies? So unfortunately, we are a very lean agency. And so we really have to focus on our DARPA technologies. But if you can take advantage of things like adoptions and become a DARPA performer, then you can be enrolled in our transition and commercialization support program. But I will give a plug for my colleagues over at the DoD. Gina Sims' office works really hard at the Pentagon to help SBIR and STTR performers. So if you're having any struggles with transition, I would feel free to reach to Gina's office for assistance. Okay, let's see. GoPert LLC says, regarding adoptions, how do you recommend we contact the PMs? That's a great one. So here's what I like to say, and I stole it from a dear friend who left DARPA, so now it's my voice track, where he used to say, why don't you think of it as like a giant bingo box? First, I would say always go to DARPAConnect.us and have them help you craft that first touch point email. But mention to them, and they're well seasoned at this, that you are eligible for adoptions. And then what they'll do is they'll help you craft that bingo box, where I suggest on the left side, you list every contract for which you are eligible for an adoption, or if you're capped out with phase 2s, you can always get a phase 3. And put then columns for phase 1, phase 2, second phase 2, and phase 3. And anywhere where they can send you funding, put like a big old green stamp or something to say, you can fund me here. Now, why that's important, again, is because if you have a phase 2, that is SBIR dollars. If you are capped out on phase 2s and have to get a phase 3, that has to be non-SBIR or program dollars. And as we all know, sometimes that can be a little harder to come by. But put that bingo box together. DARPA Connect coaches are well versed at this. They've heard me speak about this, and they will help you craft that touch point. I see Katrine asked about the Seattle meeting. It probably is not on the website, but I will tell you it is December 4th. Registration for that will probably open late October. Okay. Amanda talks about many PMs and KOs are not versed in phase 3. I would love to see SBIR support educating and motivating the transition. Amanda, I could not agree with you more, which is why I am so happy that Gina Sims took over the DoD SBIR and STTR program a few years ago. She is actually a former acquisition and contracting specialist, and she is actually committed to that and helping design programs to educate our contracting officers on the ease and flexibility of phase 3s. So more, I see Amanda's loving that. So more on that, but yes, Gina is very well versed in understanding that it is a problem and CEOs don't understand it. And so she is actually working really hard to get that changed. Okay, Kapil talks about how we should pitch your idea. My advice to you is to start with DARPA Connect. They're really designed to be that front door. They will help you craft that first touch point. Our DARPA program managers speak in what we call the Hallmark Catechism, which is a series of, depending upon which version you see, 4, 5, or 7 questions that our program managers have to answer before they can get a program idea approved. And it's everything from what is the state of the art in this area and what will it be afterwards? If we fund this, what are those midterm and final exam checkpoints for success? If we don't fund this, why would this matter? And so our DARPA Connect coaches are really designed to help you get that first touch point. And the reason why I say go to DARPA Connect first is because we are a PM-driven organization, which means our director really does not dictate where we're going. Our program managers are the ones with those ideas. So that first initial touch point with a program manager matters. At any given time, we've got about 100 to 115 technical program managers on staff at DARPA. They get anywhere from, I would say, 200 to 300 emails a day. So if you go through DARPAConnect, they help you with that email so that your email is the one that's going to get answered. And I always suggest going to them first, because you could be giving them their next idea for a SBIR topic, an ARIS topic, or a program topic. They do want to hear from you. Because we're such a lean organization, we rely on talking with technologists and innovators to do our market research. And so go through DARPAConnect, get that touch point, and then send your message to the DARPA program managers. And then I would say you can go ahead and apply. Kumar asked, are there specific topics for biotech and therapeutics? Kumar, I would say that take a look at the ARIS topics and see if what you're doing can fit into there. And if not, scan the BTO website. They also do, each office does have an office-wide BAA that comes out. But again, I encourage you to identify a program manager and connect with them first and have those conversations, and then they will help guide you on where best to go. I'm looking here. Can you share presentations? And we've covered that. The presentation will be sent out. What are the topics for life science and biologicals in the SBIR program? Topics come out on a regular basis. Next topics that would be released, I believe, August 6th. So I would just encourage you to scan and see what is open. But again, the best way to do this is to chat with the program manager, because you could be that one giving them their idea for a topic. And I'm looking, is DARPA connected to, I see Dr. Travacaster, is DARPA connected to ARPA-H? ARPA-H is its own entity that is under NIH, but given their mission, it's no surprise that many of the program managers from DARPA have left DARPA and they've gone on to continue their career at ARPA-H. In fact, the previous director of ARPA-H, Renee Wegerzin, was actually a DARPA program manager at DARPA. There is some cross-pollination, and in fact, sometimes we do joint programs or joint SBIR topics, but ARPA-H would be pretty familiar with everything at the DARPA process as well. I'm seeing Susan asking about nonprofits. Can they apply? Yeah, I would say that check the solicitations to see where you would fit in the SBIR and STTR program. Typically, research institutions can be partners. For STTRs, you have to partner with the research institution, but check the rules for SBIR to see if your nonprofit can fit into a small business to qualify as a prime. And I also see Amanda asking Gina Sims. Her name is Regina Sims, and she runs the DoD SBIR office. Maybe someone can drop that in the chat.
Yeah, I can, let's put Regina Sims in the chat. I can take that next one from the initials PA. For establishing registrations, that information's online. And I'm sure through the DARPA website or just Googling it, you can get it. If you would like support, we have two ways to doing that. The first is we can just give you a guidance document, which is best practices and a template that you fill out for your information, and you can do it yourself. Or if you'd like to engage Grant Engine to do your registrations, we can do that too. So we're making it easy to do self-service, but if you just like someone else to handle it, it's a nominal cost and we can handle that for you. And Jennifer, you're getting, you and by extension, DARPAConnect and DARPA are getting a nice compliment on the quality and caliber of your presentation and thought here, which is not surprising, but always special. So thank you. Yeah.
No, thank you. I mean, if I can leave you with any just final thoughts, because I think we've reached the end of the questions, it's that DARPA is a pretty unique agency. We are not a black box. We, as I like to say, are just a gray building in Arlington, and we really run on hearing from technologists and researchers in the community. And so that was the whole kind of premise behind DARPAConnect, to make it easier for you guys to join us and engage with us. So please do sign up at DARPAConnect.us and take a look at their resources, and also reach to me or my office if there's anything you need as well.
Yeah, that's an amazing invitation to have an agency so large and so pivotal to our national security, our way of life. And here's Jennifer Thabit just saying, email me. That very rare, it happens, but it's pretty rare in the defense arena. So
we will email you back.
that's also, yeah, very value add. So Jennifer, I on behalf of our whole organization and all the attendees, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time. If you're in the audience and you've not been exposed to DARPA, this can be the first of many fruitful and valuable discussions. And we're here at Grand Engine to help make that process a little bit easier for DARPA, and also to really be your partner and just helping to navigate. You've got an excellent partner in Jennifer and DARPA broadly, but we're here as a partner for DARPA, a partner for you, to just make us save lives and extend the length of quality life. So we're here as part of that community as well. So with that, a deep thank you for participating. And we'll conclude the webinar now. If you could stop the recording, Dan, but keep the meeting on for 1 second, that'd be great. Yeah, thanks everyone. Jennifer, we'll do a quick